let's move on. Let's talk about pricing. And wow, slightly more than we expected, right?
Indeed.
$450 US for the console, $500 if you want the console with Mario Kart. And obviously, game prices are going up there, considerably more variable. It looks as though, according to the docket here, 80 of your US bucks for Mario Kart World.
But 70 for
wow.
Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Where do we start with this? 450 for a Nintendo machine. That is significantly more than was expected. We were expecting $399. Pricing, especially in the US, is really, really difficult to get right at the moment, or to sort of hammer down, bearing in mind everything that's happening in the US with tariffs being slapped around left, right, and center here. But curious what you think about this. I think it's $399 with like a $450 packing game. I could have seen that being perfectly palatable. This kind of moves into slightly edgier territory, slightly uncomfortable. John, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm not necessarily sure it will impact the success of the unit, and it is still very competitive with the other consoles in the current landscape, of course.
Other handhelds, yeah.
And other handhelds as well. Handhelds, game consoles, everything. It's just things are more expensive, unfortunately. And it is still largely below the 500 mark, at least if you're just getting the console. Though it does obviously go up in different regions. I think the European price was like 480 euros or something like that. It was a bit higher and a little bit over 500 for the bundle. The weird one was the Japanese one, if you saw, where they're releasing two versions. There's one for 49,980 yen, which comes out to just $330. But they're also releasing one for 69,980 yen, which is $467. And I found this really clever because essentially with the current, I guess, exchange rate for the yen being what it is, that 49,000 price, which would be kind of in line with the rest of the world for locals, is cheaper if you were to import it. And this would have been ripe for scalping. Scalpers would have just went nuts on the Japanese units. So what they've done is it's a domestic only console, which means it only has a Japanese language setting and can only be linked with an account created set to the region of Japan. Which is a shit. I mean, I would have been okay with the language thing, but the region setting means that, yeah, you can only use a Japanese account. And we don't know what this means for physical games either. Presumably they would all work, but maybe not. But it's like, it's the one variant of the console that actually sort of has region locking engaged, which is something we've not seen for a long time. So it's a curious workaround to kind of ensure that I guess Japanese customers can pay a price that's a little more reasonable for that region. But they also sell a multilingual model for basically, a significant uptick, 20,000 more yen, so, which that is priced competitively with the rest of the world then, in terms of exchange rates. And that has none of those restrictions.
Okay.
So, but it does say this will be available to purchase only from the Japanese My Nintendo store.
Okay.
So this creates some very curious issues because you won't be able to just walk into a Japanese store and buy one from the shelves because you'll be getting the domestic unit only.
Okay. I'm curious what you make of all of this pricing, Oliver. $500 basically for the machine that you're actually likely to buy, because the alternative is basically more money to buy Mario Kart separately.
Yeah. In US dollars, $450, or in Canadian dollars, 630 Canadian dollars, which is a pretty high price there. I think it's pretty reasonable. Like, I was expecting a little bit of a lower price, but I also wasn't expecting Nintendo to go all out with portable display technology, which to me makes it easily worth that additional $50 premium over the counterfactual there. And then it switched one's 300 USD price, and today's money is more like 390 USD. So there is some inflation component as well you have to factor in here. But when you look at the kinds of upgrades in terms of the better SoC, the larger, much better display, much greater RAM capacity and bandwidth, I think it's worth it relative to the Switch One. I think it probably is worth it here, especially if Nintendo, like with the Switch One, if this is their flagship console for 8 years, getting access to 8 years of high quality Nintendo software. I think for a lot of people, the calculus makes sense here. I think the more curious thing is this pricing thing with, in particular with Mario Kart 8, because we probably expected Nintendo to go for higher across the board prices for their titles, like $70 perhaps, as has been the case with a lot of PS5 and Series X games recently. And that is indeed the case for the new Donkey Kong title, which is $70. But they're going with a bit of a variable approach to pricing with the new Mario Kart. They're pricing it at $80. I think in Europe they're charging 80 euros or 90 euros for the physical edition.
Yep.
Yeah, yes, they're really kind of making the prices there a little bit more amorphous, and that's certainly interesting. In the industry, I think there's been a lot of talk about should games be priced a little bit more according to content, a little bit more according to expected value, and here Nintendo is kind of just diving into that whole conversation with $80 for Mario Kart. Now, for me, $80 for Mario Kart, definitely worth it. But I'm curious to see how gamers in a broad sense react. I suspect they're going to move a lot of units of Mario Kart, but I also suspect that a lot of people are not going to be too happy potentially with a world in which the Mario Karts and the Marios and the Zeldas cost more than other comparable high budget titles.
You know who else is watching that price? Rockstar.
Yeah.
They're like, can we do $100 for GTA 6?
Well, cartridges cost more to make than discs. That's the thing. And certainly more than digital downloads. But that is a lot of money.
It's a lot.
Okay. Well, it says here on the sheet, and it is indeed true that we're looking at a June 5th release date for the Switch 2. And pre-orders from Nintendo with limitations. I assume that they're only going to allow you to buy a single unit. That kind of makes sense, right?
But there's more.
I'm going to be interested to see how the pre-order situation works out with Amazon, because they usually, that's always where I get my stuff, but I guess I'll be doing the Nintendo shop route as well.
The Nintendo shop route, though, seems to hinge on like account stuff, like how long you've been a member of the Nintendo online service, and like your playtime and all kinds of stuff like this. Like there's things about it which I think is an attempt again to combat scalping.
I think that's a good move, but the playtime limit
that actually blocks me out from being able to do this
really?
through them, because I use my American account, my personal account, for everything, because that's what has been my main account for the Switch. I don't use a German account because I don't want the German store. I don't use the German store, right? It's not interesting to me. I don't want German language products, so I'm not using that store. But if I want to buy it here in Germany, I have to use presumably the Nintendo DE store, which would want the German account. And I can't input the account that actually has all the playtime in it is the US account. So that's unique to some of us in this international world, but it is kind of annoying because it basically locks me out of that stuff entirely.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I guess we're all going to be queuing up on June 5th to get our pre-orders in.
I'll be in line.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.